My name is Serin. I'm Director of Listings Development with the Canadian Securities Exchange. Excited to be here this year. We had a few rough years, and you could tell in the halls of URIC how empty they were, but things definitely feel like they're coming back, so it's been a great few days. I hope you guys have experienced the same. I'm joined today by David Suda. He is President and CEO of TerraX. And our discussion today will be along the lines of a CEO and management team that comes with a background as an analyst, as opposed to the more traditional technical background. So thank you very much for joining me, David.
Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me. I just want to make one correction. I'm not smart enough to be an analyst. I was a trader and salesperson, and I have a background in investment banking as well, but I can't say I was an analyst. I certainly tried to portray myself as one from time to time, but that's just one correction I wanted to make.
Well, thank you for that. So why don't we actually start there? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up with TerraX?
Okay, so like a lot of people, we seem to have found ourselves in a trend where capital markets people from brokerage, not necessarily technical people, have found their way to management roles at corporate issuers. And I think that, for my part, I started in the business as a trader at a place called Paradigm Capital, which was at the time a mining-focused independent brokerage firm. I cut my teeth under a couple of the best analysts in the world at the time who continue to be highly respected there. And it was a very robust mining cycle at the time. So we were very busy. We were at the center of everything. I was a young guy trying to earn my stripes and try to sort of figure out what's what in the mining world. And I quickly sort of moved up the ranks. I had a passion for the business and for the people in the business. I established relationships at the time with both management at corporate issuers. And then also, my primary role was to service the buy side, the investors. And so I was pitching all these different companies from every angle I could. The ones that our firm, chose, our analysts selected as the ones that we wanted to back. So from there, as I grew in my career and my suite of skills evolved, I found myself as a partner at Beacon Securities, which is an independently owned brokerage firm where I became partner and managing director as well. And spent a couple of 3 very prosperous years there. And it was really from that platform that I was able to launch myself to the opportunity to lead a mining exploration company.
The independent firms are a bit of a dying breed. I'm such a big fan of theirs, and the ones that have kept going, I think they're really visionaries, and they've propped up the small cap space, I think, as well as anyone could.
For a very long time, the boutique brokerage was an excellent vehicle for, as you said, feeding the market with well-financed, strong companies with good management teams. They were able to identify them, they were able to fund them, and they were able to, in doing so, also make investors money. And in a difficult mining cycle, or a difficult cycle for any sector, it becomes challenging for these groups to do good business, because it's ultimately their clients, the institutional investors, who have had quite a tough go. Certainly the ones who have been focused on resource. So as you said, I give my old partners in the business a lot of credit for sticking with it, because they certainly do a lot to support the companies that we now work for.
Absolutely, and maybe you could dive a little bit into how you ended up with TerraX.
Sure, it's not the easiest. It's like one of those questions. How did you meet your wife? I remember the moment that it came to fruition, that it came to be that we were going to move our family from Toronto to Vancouver. It was when I sat down with Joe Campbell, who is the executive chairman, and who is also the chief geologist who found this asset, who put the property together, and who ran it up until the moment that I came on board. He continues to run it with the rest of us in the management team. But, to get to the conversation with Joe was a longer process. We have some great shareholders here at TerraX who we, on our presentation, call our strategic investors, some of whom are senior management at other successful resource-focused public companies here in Vancouver, and they have an interest in TerraX, most of them personally. And so through my relationships with them, working in brokerage, the opportunity started to present itself. I kept hearing about this great project that needs a guy who can go out and raise money for it. And so here I am, and I'm doing just that.
Well, it's a big shift to go from where you were and now kind of running the ship and steering the way for TerraX.
It's a big shift. The skill set is the same to a large degree. I appreciate it because it brings a lot more focus. And, without saying anything bad about investment banks and brokerage firms, I can say that I wholeheartedly 100% believe in this project. I'm selling something that I've, changed my life to be part of. I'm an investor. I work for our shareholders, and that's a really good feeling. And it's a big part of the reason why I wanted to take this role. So, what I do and the skill set and the relationships that I leverage in order to move TerraX forward, a lot of that remains the same. But certainly it's much different because all my eggs are in one basket.
I think, we'll dive into a little bit how your skill set does differ you from some of the other management teams that are out there right now. But and I know you have your presentation coming up on TerraX, but can you give us a little elevator pitch of what the properties are in TerraX and the program?
Sure. TerraX is a 783 square kilometer district that's been put together by Joe and his team. It's directly adjacent to the town of Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories. It's Archean greenstone. It's, geologically, I'm not a geologist, but I certainly, as I said, I've had to fake it over the years on a number of times, and eventually, you can say enough to get you in trouble for sure. But I, all kidding aside, this is a highly prospective piece of ground. It surrounds two of Canada's historic, most prolific producers, the Con and Giant Mine. So the project is really what drew me out and what made me, with all the experience that I had, all the projects that I looked at, all the resources that I had to bring to the table in terms of being able to evaluate something like this to make the change that I did, was all part and parcel of identifying that this is a fantastic opportunity certainly for myself, and then for me to stand in front of a group of investors and say that people should be shareholders of this. It's a great asset.
Well, I've been up to that area, and what I love about that area is you have a sector, in the mining sector or exploration sector, where the community itself are experts. The government supports it. It really is an ecosystem for the mining space that is quite unique than other locations globally even.
You're absolutely right, and that is something that I took a bit of a punt on because I'd never been to Yellowknife prior to learning about this project. So I had to make assumptions about what that community would be like, having traveled to the north, previously but never there. I had ideas about what the community might be like. I made assumptions based on the fact that Con and Giant had existed there, the fact that Yellowknife services the diamond mines. It's truly a part. Mining is truly a part of the fabric of Yellowknife. It's a community that was built on mining, and it hasn't always been a smooth road. But in the face of any sort of rough waters, there's always a steady, group of people there that recognize that mining is important. So that's one of the feathers in our cap, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think when we get into kind of what we're supposed to actually be talking about, which is you have this background in the capital markets specific to that, and I'll talk a little bit about my experience. So I was on the brokerage side for 10 years myself, and then I moved over to what we like to call the dark side, and I started working with junior exploration companies. And my experience, and I had the experience of both sides, was typically CEOs or management teams that were comprised mainly of technical people. They were amazing and their skill base was amazing in the projects, but they were so focused on that. It was very difficult for them to go out and raise money because they were talking more about the geology or talking more about the project or the program and losing a little bit of the story with their shareholder. And I think your role specifically, which requires a very specific group of skills, is you're a bit of a tightrope walker. So why don't you talk a little bit about what this background has done that makes you a little bit unique as far as running with TerraX?
First of all, I say we join the light side. Sorry to keep correcting you.
I think it's the light side. My mother thinks it's the dark side.
I would say I joined the light side. But the skill set is, it's really hard to say in one point what it is. If somebody asked me, what'd you learn in all your years being a trader, sales guy, investment banker, I would say that the number one skill that I acquired, by really cutting my teeth, there was no education that really, gave me the ability to stand here and say that I know that communicating with investors, taking feedback from the market, informing a company's strategy with that feedback, thinking about where the next exploration dollar is going to come from, thinking about dilution, and thinking about, there are so many pieces of the puzzle that go into effectively, raising money for an entity that itself doesn't, at this point, produce any cash flow. The value is all about making sure that, as you said, it's a tightrope walk of, when do you raise money, at what price, and what's the right time, and who do you want to be your shareholders, and are they going to be there for the long haul, and once they start feeling fatigue in a tough market, how do you keep them interested? How do you bring new people to the equation? And these are all questions and answers that I experienced over a long period of time with a great number of companies, with a vast network of investors. So at this point, when I'm sitting, in the office at TerraX and somebody phones and says, I'm wondering about why you guys did this, to me, that's a very natural conversation. I've had it many times. I've been an advocate for other companies. If that question is posed to a geologist who sees things black and white, technical, believes in the project, and just needs the next dollar to come in so they can find the next ounce of gold, it's tough for them to answer that question in a way that's satisfactory and one that also ensures that that next dollar of investment to produce that next, or to find that next ounce of gold, is a challenge. And I think that's sort of what sets capital markets people apart from technical people. I'll also say that I'm the first person, and I was the first person back in the day when I was sitting on a desk, to, as soon as I got to a point where a question was taking me out of my depth, I would have them on the phone with an analyst, and that's what I do right now with Joe. I'm not a geologist. I'm certainly learning a lot about the geology at the project, but I also recognize that it's really important to give the technical people the opportunity to present the project, to assure investors that the technical aspects, elements, the geology, that it's all there and in place. I'm a communicator, I'm a marketer, I'm a raiser of funds, and my job is to just push the project forward so that the project gains value and eventually people make money. That's really my goal.
Well, and I think too, this is kind of a neat opportunity that probably a lot of people, with your background would hope for, is what you did was your due diligence on projects and get your investors invested into a project that you liked at the time. And that's where your relationship ended with it. You no longer had any say over the use of proceeds. You're in a rare opportunity right now. You get to go and raise the money, deal with the shareholders, bring it into the treasury, and now actually have some control over what happens with those use of proceeds. That must be a little lightening as far as some of the projects you might have worked on in the past.
Thanks for mentioning that, because that's the crux of it, really.
Yeah.
It's a really important element that you've added to the conversation, which is, as brokers, we raised money, we talked to investors, we pitched ideas, right or wrong, on to the next one. This is completely different. I am standing at the front of the spear. We're bringing money in to bring value to shareholders, and that's as you said, it has to go all the way through the food chain of the company. It's all about bringing that money in and then thinking about how to use it wisely, how to make sure that it lasts. If you're seeing, a tough cycle in the market, if you have tailwinds, you can do more. If you have headwinds, you have to do less. That's probably, I'm not at the point where I can say I feel the satisfaction because we're not there yet, but we're going there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one other thing I wanted to make sure we touched on was, this is something I've been told my whole life, and it's something I told, my book of clients when I was on the brokerage side as well. And I think sometimes we talk about it so much we forget kind of the value of what the statement is, and that is that you got to invest in management. So maybe we could chat a little bit about your views on what that actually means, because I think sometimes we don't really dive too far into the importance of what that is. At the end of the day, projects are projects, but how use of proceeds is used, how the program is delivered, and the team that's put together by the executives, officers, directors, really is kind of the basis of most of these junior plays, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think that one of the first things investors look at is, what is an asset and who are management? And the first thing that people look at, the easiest thing to hang your hat on as an investor, is to think about, what's somebody's track record. What's their reputation? What skill set do they bring to the table? Are they aligned with the company? That's, to me, the number one question that came up in boardrooms. People would ask, well, how much stock do management own? And if that number was small, then it starts to beg the question, is management aligned with shareholders? So I think that, to me, is number one. I think every company that is trying to move forward, every company that's trying to make money for investors is going to get the best management team they can with the skills that are appropriate to their role. All of those things matter. But at the end of the day, you want management that has the skills, has the desire to succeed. I mean, there are some people who, don't necessarily need to make money anymore or work hard during a day, or I've seen that many times. You see apathetic management teams that are basically riding in these companies, and I think that shareholders are looking for people who are engaged, who are driving for the satisfaction of success, who are shareholders of the company that they're representing. And so, to me, that's what I would be. That's who I want to be, and those are the kinds of teams that I want to be a part of.
Well, and I think to that note, and listen, I mean, obviously there's other sectors that have really taken a lead and a headwind in these markets, but is kind of shining an actual light for the first time on the small cap space in the junior worlds, especially in the resource sector. That when you're looking at the management team, you're looking at people now that have 30, 35 years experience, who have worked on the capital market side or the technical side. And I think that's something that's really important as we're looking at these companies now. There's other sectors that have blown up, and the sectors are so young in age that nobody has the ability to have that kind of a background. We don't have the data that supports it. So, I mean, myself, I'm a big fan of the resource sector, and I think there's a real opportunity in 2019 for us to see kind of some great things happen within the sector. And so I wish you and TerraX the best of luck. Thank you very much. The other thing I wanted to mention is I think somebody with this background as a potential shareholder would be, you clearly have a center of influence of people who have followed you in the past and some support levels in the secondary market.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me up here and for guiding a great conversation. I appreciate it.
Sounds great. Thank you, David.